There's a certain silence that follows injustice. It isn't peace, it's pressure. Have you ever seen respect snatched away in broad daylight, only to be restored by a single phone call? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe to honor the veterans in your community. Danielle Harris didn't flinch when the first officer raised his voice. Her boots, though now scuffed from years of use outside combat zones, were planted steady on the sidewalk outside the pharmacy entrance. A brown paper bag clutched in one hand, the other rested against her thigh, fingers relaxed, not curled. She wasn't aggressive. She wasn't rude. But she didn't back away either. "Ma'am, I asked you a question," Officer Reynolds barked again, stepping in close, too close. Danielle's eyes met his, level and unblinking. "And I answered you," she replied. "I'm waiting for my ride share." It was the third time she had said it, clearly, calmly. Reynolds huffed and turned slightly to his partner, Jake Palmer, whose lips twitched with a smirk. "Standing here this long. Seems like she's casing the building or loitering. Either way, she doesn't move. She gets written up." Danielle could smell the tobacco on Reynolds' breath. His badge gleamed under the afternoon sun, but the respect it once represented felt as dull as rust. "You got ID?" he snapped, already reaching toward his belt as though preempting a refusal. She set the paper bag down gently at her feet. From her back pocket she pulled out her wallet, no sudden movements. She'd learned a long time ago how important that was. The laminated veteran health identification card slid out with ease, her fingers holding it like it was a holy document. Reynolds snatched it before she could even extend her hand fully. "Danielle Harris, U.S. Army Combat Medic," he read aloud in a voice that mocked the weight of those words. "Cute. Real cute." Palmer snorted. "You a medic, huh? You sew up dolls in the sandbox or what?" Danielle's jaw flexed. Still, she said nothing. Not yet. They didn't see the subtle shift in her posture, how her shoulders squared just slightly, how her stance widened by half an inch. But she saw everything. Reynolds' thumb resting near his baton, Palmer's fingers fiddling with his radio. The sidewalk now felt like a chessboard, and she was always 5 moves ahead. A middle-aged man walking by slowed, watched, then kept moving. "What's up?" "No one ever did, until it was too late." "You have no right to disrespect me," Danielle said quietly. "I served. I gave more to this country than you ever will in that badge." Reynolds chuckled without humor. "Lady, everyone's a veteran when they get caught doing something they shouldn't be. Got a DD 2014, too? Or is this card something you printed off your cousin's printer?" That was it. She didn't raise her voice, didn't curse, didn't plead. Instead, Danielle reached for the one thing they couldn't see, the network behind her. Not the army of likes and hashtags, the real network, the one built through years of deployments, VA battles, advocacy events, and midnight crisis calls. She tapped her phone and scrolled through her favorites. Teresa Caldwell. Her thumb hovered over the call icon, then pressed. Palmer noticed. "Who are you calling?" Danielle didn't answer. Instead, she spoke into the phone the moment the line connected. "Dr. Caldwell, I'm with 2 officers outside the VA pharmacy in Westfield Plaza. They're detaining me without cause. They're mocking my service status." There was a long pause. Then a crisp, measured voice replied, just loud enough for Palmer to hear. "Stay exactly where you are, Sergeant Harris. I'll take care of it." Danielle slipped the phone into her pocket. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was pressure. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. "Who the hell was that?" Danielle looked at him, not smiling. "My VA liaison. But don't worry, you'll meet her soon." Palmer laughed nervously. "You think you're special or something? That some VA shrink's gonna scare us off?" Danielle raised an eyebrow. "No, but I think internal affairs might. You know, especially when you're still under departmental review from that stop-and-frisk incident last fall." Palmer's smirk fell. The color drained from his face like air from a punctured tire. Reynolds blinked hard, lips pressed tight. Danielle said nothing more. She bent to pick up her paper bag, the simple movement slow and deliberate. When she stood again, 2 dark SUVs were already pulling up to the curb across the street. No sirens, just presence. From the lead vehicle stepped a tall black woman in a Mavie-Mool suit, flanked by 2 agents wearing Department of Veterans Affairs credentials. Dr. Teresa Caldwell walked like someone used to both briefing Congress and comforting widows. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk like a metronome of purpose. Palmer took a half-step back. Reynolds stood straighter, eyes darting. Danielle remained still, the center of the storm she had calmly summoned. Dr. Caldwell approached and looked the officers over with the cool detachment of someone assessing a tumor. Then she turned to Danielle, her expression softening. "Sergeant Harris, are you all right?" "I am now," Danielle replied. Caldwell turned to the officers. "Would either of you like to explain why a decorated combat veteran, legally parked outside a federal pharmacy, was detained, mocked, and questioned about the authenticity of her service record?" Reynolds opened his mouth, then closed it. Palmer's radio crackled, but he didn't move. Teresa didn't wait. "Good. Don't bother. You'll have time to explain it." "At your disciplinary hearing. And if you're lucky, that'll happen before the DOJ investigation." A small crowd had started to gather now, phones out, faces tense. Danielle didn't speak again. She didn't need to. She already won this battle, and she had done it without raising her voice, without backing down, and without betraying the oath she once swore to protect others, even from within. The cost of composure. Danielle sat in the back of the VA vehicle as it moved through city traffic, her hands resting on her lap, her fingers still steady. The bag from the pharmacy sat beside her, its contents untouched. Nerve pain meds, sleep aids, a bottle of turmeric capsule she didn't believe in but kept buying anyway. Dr. Caldwell sat beside her, legs crossed, phone pressed to her ear as she conducted damage control without ever raising her voice. "Request full body cam footage." "Yes." "Both officers. If the audio's compromised, flag it. Also pull their personnel files. I want every misconduct complaint, especially anything racial or involving veterans," she said, voice calm but cutting. "And alert Colonel Monroe at the Oversight Board. Tell her I'm invoking federal jurisdiction." Danielle stared out the window. Her reflection looked like someone else. Older, harder, maybe just more tired. It wasn't the confrontation itself that wore on her. It was the predictability of it. After all these years, after all those ceremonies and thank yous and folded flags, it still came down to this. A black woman in a hoodie on a sidewalk, assumed guilty before she even spoke. "They're going to lose their badges," Caldwell said, hanging up. "And if they don't, I'll lose my job trying." Danielle turned slightly. "That's not why I called you." Caldwell gave her a look. "You called because you were being humiliated. You called because your presence, your uniform, your service, it wasn't enough." Again, Danielle didn't deny it. "I called because I needed to remind myself I wasn't alone." "That's different." The SUV made a turn toward the federal district. It wasn't where Danielle lived, but she wasn't ready to go home yet. Not to the quiet. Not to the silence. The one that creeps in after indignity. The kind that makes you wonder if maybe you are making a big deal out of nothing. Caldwell picked up on the shift in her breathing. "You don't have to explain, but I do need you to let this play out. Don't let them bury this." Danielle nodded faintly, then let her head fall back against the seat. Her mind wasn't in the car anymore. It was 10 years ago, on a hot day in Kandahar, dust swirling around a convoy that never should have rolled through the valley that fast. One of the younger guys, Ramirez, took shrapnel through his thigh. She still remembered the way the blood sprayed, the way the radio cracked with panicked voices. She remembered not panicking, just working, just saving him. No one questioned her that day. No one asked if she was really qualified. No one wondered if her ID was fake. They trusted her with life and death. And now she had to justify. Hey, Caldwell's voice pulled her back. I'm not saying you need to be a poster child. You don't owe the system a damn thing. But what you did today, holding your ground the way you did, that's the stuff they should be teaching in training seminars. Danielle smiled slightly. They won't. Caldwell nodded. No, but I will. They pulled into the parking structure at the federal building. It was sterile and concrete and buzzed with quiet authority. Caldwell led her through the lower entrance and past security without a word. Everyone nodded at Danielle. No one dared stop her here. Upstairs, they entered a conference room with wide windows and a soft hum of A/C. A man in a crisp gray suit stood as they entered. He looked military, even though he was clearly civilian now. Probably retired. Danielle Harris, he said with the kind of smile reserved for people you already know by reputation. I'm Martin Vega, Deputy Director, Office of Veteran Advocacy. She offered her hand. He shook it with both of his. We've seen your name in some impressive case files, Vega continued, but I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Danielle pulled out the pharmacy bag and set it on the table. Sorry to disappoint. I was just trying to pick up my meds. Vega's smile faded. And instead, you became a national example. Danielle's eyes narrowed. You mean a symbol? He didn't flinch. Yes. Caldwell cut in. She's not here for a press op. Of course not. Vega gestured for them to sit. But if she wants the full weight of the federal response, we'll need to be deliberate. This isn't just about punishing two officers. It's about precedent, pattern, protection. Danielle leaned forward. Let's say you make an example out of them. What changes? Visibility, Vega answered. Disciplinary reform, funding for bias training, real training, not PowerPoints, and future officers will know there's a line they can't cross, not just morally but legally. Danielle sat back. And if you don't win, then at least we tried. His voice was softer now. At least we didn't let it slide. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Danielle stood. Keep me informed, she said. But don't use my name for your headlines. If this helps the next vet standing alone on a sidewalk, good. That's all I care about. Caldwell nodded proudly, but Vega looked down, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. Danielle walked out without waiting for a reply. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A text from Hank Morales, a Marine buddy who now ran a non-profit for at-risk vets. Saw what happened, got your back, already posted your footage, it's everywhere now. Danielle exhaled through her nose. She had expected this. Hank was the kind who made things viral before you could stop him. The next text came seconds later. You trending? Of course, she was. The moment a black veteran stands up to humiliation without throwing a punch, people either call her a hero or call her a liar. But at least now they had to choose. And Danielle Harris? She had already made her peace with that. She stepped outside into the heat, shoulders squared again, her body steady like a mountain that doesn't need to shout to be noticed. The fallout begins. Danielle hadn't turned on the news, but she didn't need to. By the time she reached her apartment, a modest second-floor walk-up on the edge of Westfield, her phone was already lit up with notifications. Missed calls from Hank. A voicemail from her old squad leader, now running logistics for a VA hospital in Georgia. A message from her landlord asking if the people with cameras were going to be there all week. She closed the door, locked the deadbolt, and stood in the center of her living room with the lights off, letting the quiet press around her. The paper bag with her prescriptions made a dull thump as she set it on the kitchen counter. She hadn't taken anything yet. Her body buzzed, not from pain, but from adrenaline. People always talked about the fight-or-flight instinct. They never mentioned what came after. She walked past the shelf above her couch. Photos of her parents, a shadow box with their combat medic badge, a folded flag from a memorial detail she volunteered for in 13. None of it felt connected to what had happened outside that pharmacy. None of it had shielded her from the suspicion, from the smirk, from the way Palmer looked at her like her service was a punchline. She sat on the edge of her bed and finally listened to one voicemail. "Hey, Danny, it's Staff Sergeant Bolton. Well, former SSGT now. Just Chris these days. I saw the footage. Damn. Proud of you. I mean that. I know it's not the kind of thing you signed up for, but the way you stood there, you looked like you were still in uniform, like you were still on mission. Anyway, if you need anything, call me. Doesn't matter what." She didn't cry. She rarely did, but her throat tightened. There had been so many missions, so many times she kept others from falling apart, but no one ever warned her what it would feel like when the battlefront moved to her own doorstep. The next morning, Danielle walked into a diner she hadn't visited in months. Corner booth. Place smelled like burnt toast and lemon cleaner. A young waitress behind the counter did a double take when she walked in. "You're her," the girl said softly. "You're the vet from the video." Danielle stopped mid-step. "I'm just here for coffee." The girl blushed. "Of course. Sorry, it's just we've had people coming in all morning talking about it. Someone printed out your photo and taped it to the window like you're a local hero or something." Danielle sighed but kept moving. She wasn't angry. Not really. Just tired of becoming a symbol when all she wanted was caffeine. Halfway through her second cup, Hank walked in. Ball cap, dark hoodie, phone in hand. "I know you hate public attention," he said, sliding into the booth. "So I figured I'd come ruin your peace in person." Danielle smirked. "At least you're consistent." He put his phone face up on the table. On the screen, a paused clip of her standoff with the officers. The view was slightly different, recorded from a nearby parked car. She hadn't known there were multiple angles. "They pulled body cam too," Hank added. "You should see the timestamps. They had you standing there for nearly 12 minutes before you even pulled your phone out. That's restraint." Danielle shook her head. "That's reality. We can't afford to move fast." Hank's expression hardened. "Well, now the brass is paying attention. The local PD issued a statement this morning, investigating the matter thoroughly. Blah, blah. Standard cover-your-ass language. But word is, the feds are setting up interviews. Real ones." Danielle stirred her coffee. "They'll try to spin it, say it was a misunderstanding." "Not this time," Hank said. "Too much pressure. People are watching." Danielle leaned back. "They only watch because they're waiting for us to mess up. Waiting for me to lose control." Hank studied her face. "And you didn't." She met his gaze. "No, but it cost me something." Hank nodded slowly. "You think being calm is free? Every time you swallow rage, it takes a piece. That's why so many of us walk around with ghosts we can't explain." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a file folder. "What's this?" she asked. "Documentation. People have come forward, other vets, black, Latino, native, said they've had similar run-ins with Reynolds and Palmer. Most of them never filed complaints. Figured it wouldn't matter, but now it matters." Danielle opened the folder and scanned the statements. There were 6 so far. All recent, all eerily similar. Her grip on the folder tightened. "They've been doing this for years," she said. "Yeah," Hank replied. "And they finally picked the wrong one." Danielle looked out the window. Across the street, someone had taped a poster to the bus stop glass. It was a screenshot from the video. her face calm, her hand raised in a quiet refusal. Underneath, someone had scrawled in black marker, "Stand like her." She closed her eyes. Not because she was flattered, because she knew what came next. For every symbol, there was a backlash. For every badge of courage, someone else came swinging with a boot to knock it loose. "You still good?" Hank asked. "I'm steady," she said. "That's what scares them." He pulled out his phone again and scrolled through messages. "A journalist wants to talk. National outlet. Wants to run a piece on systemic bias in law enforcement responses to minority veterans. Wants you to be the focus." Danielle didn't look up. "Tell her no. I'm not a headline." Hank paused. "Then what do you want to be?" She finally met his eyes again. "I want to be a reminder that we don't just carry medals, we carry memories, and we don't let them be rewritten by anyone who's afraid of what we represent." Outside, a car rolled past, blasting music. Danielle didn't flinch. She had already been through louder. When the system listens. Danielle stood just outside the glass doors of the federal hearing room, her breath slow and deliberate. Inside, a long rectangular table gleamed beneath fluorescent lights. Everything looked polished, staged. Even the bottled waters had perfect labels facing front. But what mattered now wasn't the furniture. It was the lineup of badges and brass on the other side of that door. Internal Affairs, Oversight Committee, 2 deputy chiefs. And seated in the center, hands folded like she ran the whole damn show, was Dr. Teresa Caldwell. Danielle's name had been called 15 seconds ago. She was still standing still. Until now. She stepped forward. Every click of her boots on the marble floor was its own declaration. Not defiance, not aggression, just presence. Solid, unshakable presence. As she entered, no one whispered, not out of respect, out of awareness. Everyone in that room had seen the footage. Most of them had read the reports. Some had already tried to minimize it, frame it as an unfortunate incident or an isolated misunderstanding. Danielle wasn't here to let them get away with that. "Sergeant Danielle Harris," one of the internal investigators said, adjusting his tie, "thank you for being here." Danielle took her seat and placed her hands flat on the table. "You asked me here to speak truthfully," she said. "I will. But I'll do it my way." The silence that followed was heavy, but Caldwell gave her a faint nod. Danielle continued, "I served 12 years in the Army, 2 tours in Afghanistan. I treated soldiers, civilians, even enemy combatants. My job wasn't to decide who deserved care. It was to give it. That's the code I lived by." She paused. "Last week I stood outside a pharmacy waiting for my ride share, and 2 men with badges decided I didn't belong there. Didn't believe I was who I said I was. Laughed at the idea that someone like me could be a veteran. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I didn't swing. I called someone who could protect me the only way the system would understand." She looked directly at the deputy chief now, whose fingers fidgeted under the table. "But I shouldn't have had to—" The committee chair cleared her throat. "Ms. Harris, the department is actively reviewing Officer Reynolds and Officer Palmer's conduct. We're also considering new training protocols based on this incident." Danielle held up a hand. "I'm not here for apologies," she said, voice calm but cutting. "And I'm not here for policy drafts you'll water down in 6 months. I'm here so that the next black veteran, standing somewhere they've every right to be, doesn't get treated like a suspect in their own life." The room remained still. Danielle reached into her folder and slid it forward. 6 other complaints, all from veterans of color, all tied to the same officers. None investigated until now. That tells me it's not just a people problem, it's a pattern problem. Culture problem. Caldwell turned the file toward herself and passed it to the rest of the board. Danielle sat back. "And before you ask, no, I don't want those men fired because I'm angry. I want them fired because they broke the oath they swore when they pinned on that badge. Just like I would have been court-martialed if I'd humiliated a civilian in a war zone." The deputy chief straightened, almost defensive. "Officer Reynolds has over 10 years of service and zero accountability," Danielle cut in. "Service doesn't erase misconduct. You of all people should know that." The investigator beside him nodded faintly. "The officers in question have been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of this hearing." Danielle didn't respond to that. She already knew what mattered now wasn't what happened to them. It was what happened next for everyone else. One of the younger members of the committee leaned forward. "What would justice look like to you?" Danielle didn't hesitate. "Accountability, transparency, and investment. Retraining your force isn't enough. You need veteran liaison officers, people who understand what it means to serve, people who look like the communities they patrol. You want the public to trust the badge again? Start by making sure the badge trusts us first." The room remained silent for a moment that felt like a held breath. Then Caldwell stood. "We'll be implementing that recommendation," she said, "effective immediately." The committee chair nodded. "Agreed." Danielle didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just nodded once. Outside the hearing room, Hank was waiting by the elevator. When she stepped out, he held up a fist. Danielle bumped it lightly. "Well?" he asked. "They listened," she said. "For real?" "For now." They stepped into the elevator. As the doors slid shut, Hank grinned. "Hope you're ready to be in a few more headlines. You're already all over the veteran forums." Danielle chuckled softly. "They better spell my name right this time." They exited the building onto a bright spring afternoon. Across the street, a mural had gone up. Danielle hadn't seen it yet. Someone had painted her silhouette in grayscale, head held high, arms at her side. No flag, no uniform, just strength. The crowd had gathered, not protesters, not reporters, just people. Some waved. One elderly man in a wheelchair saluted. Danielle returned it instinctively. A woman approached, mid-30s, baby carrier strapped across her chest. She looked nervous but determined. "Excuse me," she said. I just wanted to say thank you. My husband's a Marine. He saw what you did, said it gave him hope." Danielle nodded, the corner of her mouth twitching into something almost like a smile. "Tell him he's not alone," she said. "None of us are." Later that evening, back in her apartment, Danielle finally took her medication and sat on the couch. She turned on the news just long enough to confirm the story had broken nationwide. But she didn't watch the whole segment. Instead, she muted the TV, picked up her phone, and sent one message. To a private group chat full of veterans she'd met over the years. "If they try to silence one of us, they'll hear all of us. We're not done." The replies flooded in. Thumbs up, salutes, fists, hearts. Danielle leaned back, eyes closed. She wasn't just a symbol now. She was a signal. And for once the system had actually listened. For once, standing her ground hadn't cost her peace, it had restored it. And somewhere out there, another vet watched her story play out and felt a little less alone. A little more seen, a little more ready to stand